I'm David Lombardo, and this is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room. Back in 2023, New York settled a lawsuit brought by low-income New Yorkers who challenged the state's Medicaid coverage restrictions and bans on certain dental services, including root canals, crowns, and denture replacements. Under the settlement, Medicaid was supposed to cover these services when deemed necessary by a licensed dentist, but the provisions of that agreement are set to expire 4 years after the settlement was agreed upon. To address Medicaid benefits after the settlement expires, state lawmakers overwhelmingly approved a statutory update to the dental services covered by Medicaid. For more on the issue, we're joined in the Capitol Press Room by Belkys Garcia, a staff attorney in the Civil Law Reform Unit at the Legal Aid Society. Thanks so much for making the time, Belkys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, I want to begin by talking about the situation back in, I believe, 2018 that prompted a class action lawsuit against New York. So can you explain what low-income New Yorkers were experiencing when it came to their effort to try to access medically necessary dental services?
Yeah, sure. So, for as long as I have been doing this work, we have been getting calls at the Legal Aid Society from Medicaid recipients who have been denied Medicaid coverage for really basic dental care. It's just one of the most common things that people would call about. And we unfortunately would have to tell people the thing you're seeking, a root canal, a crown, things that might seem pretty routine, just is not covered by the Medicaid program. And the coverage rules were outdated. They were pretty arcane. And if I can just kind of give you an example of what some of those rules were that would lead to a lot of these calls, is we had a rule in New York that is known as the 8 points of contact rule. And what that says is that if you have four pairs of teeth in the back of your mouth, that's enough. And any treatment that you might need, like a root canal or a crown on a tooth, was not covered, because if you had those four pairs of teeth, that's all the New York State Medicaid dental program said that you needed. And so what New York would pay for is to have the teeth extracted. So we had a program that really favored pulling teeth rather than treating teeth that could be saved. And so the option that people had is you just keep having your teeth pulled, or you take out a credit card, you borrow money from family to get the coverage and the care that you needed. And, the Medicaid program is for, by definition, low-income people. So it is, causing the physical harm that comes with pulling teeth, and the kind of cascading problems that come as people lose teeth, but also financial harm of putting people into greater debt to access the care they needed. And when people call and say, I got denied, I'm trying to get access to this thing, and it was disappointing to have to tell people, I'm sorry, you just don't really have a great legal remedy here. The Medicaid program just doesn't cover that. So the really only and best option we had was to try to change those rules. So the Legal Aid Society and our co-counsel, Wilkie Farr Gallagher and Freshfield Bruckhouse Derringer, filed a lawsuit in 2018 to challenge some of the specific rules that our clients were facing barriers to receiving the certain services. So root canals, crowns, as I said, replacement dentures, and dental implants. And that case settled in 2023, with the new rules going to effect in 2024. So we have been living for a couple of years under these new rules where people are no longer denied those services as a result of them not being covered. Now, I think anybody that has health insurance knows that just because you have health insurance coverage for a thing doesn't mean that accessing that care is really easy and that you necessarily get approved for everything you need.
Yeah, let's talk about the implementation of this. The settlement took effect in January of 2024, and we're talking about a Medicaid population that I think is about 5 million New Yorkers, at least when we spoke about this in 2023. And not every dentist accepts Medicaid, so that's a challenge in and of itself. So what's your understanding about the first couple years of implementation of this settlement? I mean, has it had a meaningful difference in terms of people being able to actually access crowns and root canals and other medically necessary dental care?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I am in the position of if you are coming to me, it means you didn't get what you needed, right? So I am more frequently going to see people who my client work are
Hmm.
going to be people who were denied. Um, but the data that we do have shows that it has been meaningful, that everybody I speak to is not everybody in the world, right? Like people are getting approved, some people are getting approved for this. And insurance coverage is the first or it's a necessary step in expanding access, right? Like if you don't have that coverage, like I said, you just don't get it. You lose that tooth or you go into debt for it. It is a difficult system to navigate, but people are able to appeal those denials, which was not an option before. You could appeal it, but you would just lose them because it was not a covered benefit. And I will say for us at the Legal Aid Society, we overwhelmingly win the cases where we are appealing the denials. People do, it's a long road, but people are getting access to the care they're seeking.
Well, before we move on, let me reintroduce you for listeners just joining us. This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room. I'm David Lombardo, and we're speaking with Belkys Garcia, a staff attorney in the Civil Law Reform Unit at the Legal Aid Society. So it's my understanding that the settlement had a sunset date of January 2028, and in response to that, Assemblymember Amy Paulin championed a statutory fix, essentially writing the Medicaid coverage requirement into state law. Is that essentially what the bill does? Does it do anything else to expand Medicaid benefits or address the challenge of actually finding a provider? I mean, what should we think of this bill that's awaiting the governor's signature?
Yeah, so that's right. This bill does right into social services law, into the law that Medicaid coverage includes those services we were talking about, root canals, crowns, lengthening when a root canal and crown is necessary, dentures, replacement dentures, dental implants, and related services. So it makes it explicit in the law that those are covered services. Um, that is important because, as you said, they're currently being covered under a settlement agreement that will sunset. I think I might need to check the sunset date. I think it's November of next year, November 2027.
Well, that's the
Um,
language from the bill memo.
is that right? Okay.
But lawmakers
In
have
any
been
case,
known to get things wrong in the past, so let's not take it as gospel.
yeah, yeah. But it will sunset. It's that is in place until the settlement is ongoing. And at the end of that settlement time period, the Department of Health could go back to these kind of old and arcane rules that I was talking about before. And this would make it explicit in the law that these are services that can't be excluded, that they're an included service. Does it do something to increase the access? I mean, our healthcare system, our Medicaid system is so patchwork, so complicated. There is there are simply not enough dentists who accept Medicaid. There's a real desert of Medicaid providers, and I'm very grateful for the ones that do accept Medicaid and serve this population. And many of them are mission driven to serve low income people, but there are just not enough of them. And having coverage again, it's one step towards meaningful access, but it is not in itself enough. And the Department of Health has made efforts to try to expand the network adequacy for these services. They recently did a loan forgiveness program for dentists, but a lot more work is needed to make this as meaningful and impactful as it can be.
Well, how does potentially increasing the Medicaid rates enter into this equation? Because what we often hear
That's
is that a service by a dentist might cost X to do, and Medicaid says we'll give you X minus $50. So is that what the problem is here? We need to just change the rates? Should we be thinking about a mandate and just say, hey, if you want to take private insurance, you're also going to have to take Medicaid coverage? What are the solutions that are on the table or might be practicable?
Those are different questions, right? So I
Yeah.
think the rates is really the first answer. And I think if you talk to any dentist, that's what they would say, right? They would say the Medicaid program makes it impossible for me to do this work. I can't get reimbursed. It costs me more to provide the care than not, right? So I think the rates are really the fastest first answer to this, that the rates need to be increased. So Medicaid dentists can continue to provide the service, and it brings more dentists into the program, for sure. In terms of what is on the table or what can be done, I mean, I think you get a lot of really broad ranging answers. Like the New York Health Act could expand access if we had universal health care. The idea that you're proposing a mandate for providing Medicaid coverage, like all of these, I think, are things we should all be talking about. I don't know that they're all on the table at the moment.
Has this always been the case where Medicaid coverage for dental services seems to be either an afterthought or just have less of a interest from stakeholders in government? Or was there a time when people used to say, oh, that Medicaid coverage in New York, I got the best set of teeth ever with those benefits?
That's a really interesting question. So I'll say this, that New York has provided public dental care since before the Medicaid program existed. We were providing a dental program when we enacted Medicaid in 1965. And I think that is 66. I think that's a history that New Yorkers should be proud of. But we didn't update a lot of the clinical criteria, as I was saying, since that time. And this gearing towards pulling teeth really is just it's not been the standard of care for many decades. I don't know that in 1966 people thought that I don't know. I don't know if people thought that they had the best dental program that there ever was. But it's also true that there is a long history that again predates the Medicaid program of the mouth being kind of considered separate from the rest of the body. And there is a lot of effort and movement to integrate oral health into our overall physical and mental health programs. And that is work that we need to continue to do.
There is a push among some Democratic state lawmakers to expand the scope of practice of, say, dental hygienists, or even creating new licensing that would allow for people to operate sort of in that gray space between a dentist and a dental hygienist. And one of the questions I have about that is the idea that you're creating a two-tiered system of care where people with, say, good private insurance are going to then have access to the dentist and theoretically the best coverage. And then people who have Medicaid, for example, will go to these dental therapists, this newly created midway position. As a civil rights focused person, are you worried about something like that, this two-tiered system? Or is your perspective, hey, as long as we're getting people into the dentist's office, it's a win?
Thank you so much for raising that. I should have raised that earlier. I'm not worried that dental therapy is going to provide or expanding the scope of practice harms the Medicaid population. I think that the more people who are providing care that are qualified and able to do it to all of us is a benefit for all of us, right? If we can increase the quality of care and the access to care for oral health care for all of us, I think that is a benefit for all of us. Like I said, it has economic impacts on the state as well, to be able to expand access. So I'm not worried about that.
Well, we've been speaking with Belkys Garcia. She's a staff attorney in the Civil Law Reform Unit at the Legal Aid Society. Belkys, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell and Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.